Oh, hello.
What was that?
There.
Great start. It's going to be a good evening tonight.
I'm praying in tongues. There.
Hello,
Uh,
everybody.
hello. Okay.
Welcome to the
S-
Madhouse.
Yeah. So we decided to record this episode. Uh, this episode will be going live some point within June 2023, because we may be listening like 20 years in the future. Like, ooh,
Which will be weird because I'll probably be dead.
no, they're like recordings.
It's going to keep me alive just to haunt me with these recordings.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're listening, like, if you're watching like 20 years in the future, write down in the comments how 2043 looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah. I will be 62.
I'll be old, very old.
Ancient.
I don't mind boggles.
Uh,
Well,
yeah. So
maybe I'll be here to listen back or look back at
you
these.
never know. You never
Um,
know. You Brits, you don't tend to die. Is that like you seem to live forever? It's like you know.
or maybe Jesus will take the opportunity to come back and save us all from ourselves.
Do you think we'll be so lucky?
I, yeah, let's hope. Blessed release. Uh,
Yeah, so it will be released on, obviously we're releasing as first releasing during June, because June is Pride Month. So
Yay!
we should like put some uh, face paint next year. We make a note for next year.
Oh,
Put
sorry.
some face paint
Or,
during the episode.
or rainbow backgrounds.
Yeah, something like this. I mean, I could
Rainbow.
put one now, but it's gonna look too weird. Uh,
We'll, we'll,
it's not
we'll
gonna look alright.
stick with traditional metal black.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, so we said like to do like some little bit like a conversation around the whole LGBTQ thing. I don't know if you should call it thing. Yeah,
it's
the
it's a
LGBTQ.
thing. It's a hashtag. It must be a thing.
So I don't know. Pretend I'm a boomer and I don't know what I'm talking about.
And I'm just
I'm only millennial.
and I was brought up in the 70s, so just on the record, anything I say, don't take offence. It's it's institutional and it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah, excuse the age. Like, so yeah, so before we start, like a couple of updates. So those updates will be relevant only if you're listening close to the time of the actual release. But yeah, I mean, if you're listening a few years down the line, then you can go and look if we're still doing those things. So one thing is, I'm starting a collab. We're working on a collab with Asylum in London. So we're gonna run some discipleship group, a discipleship group or two, with one of the leaders there. So I'm gonna collabing with them. So we're gonna be, when that starts going live, we're gonna be posting some links and updates on our media as well, so we can, so people from our local area can join, and that will be a good opportunity also for us to get connected with local people, uh, without you just stand there and wait for someone to turn up. Uh, and yeah, the other one was, if you see the post, like a post that's mostly personal stuff. That's a project I'm working in my mind for over a year now, and I just started it. It's around extreme metal and meditation. So doing recording guided meditations with extreme metal background and video game soundtracks, and it's all like, I bring a lot of like metal and horror themes in it. So I'm meditating again like zombies and orcs and with this kind of stuff.
Sounds really zen.
Yeah, I send it to some friends that are kind of goths and metalheads. It's like, yeah, like it's great, like fantastic. Yeah, it's very niche, so but it's kind of. But for me,
That's got to be the understatement of the year.
it's in the long run is because I'm also gonna be talking about like metal and mental health and the positive impact of metal in people's mental health and positivity and these kind of things. So ultimately from that, I would like to in the future to run some to do a course basically, would be around therapy and meditation, like in-person groups. So include like group therapy and meditation. So that's my
Cool.
ultimate goal from that. But if it doesn't happen, then that's fine. I still, the material is. I believe it's a lot of value of it to be out there anyway. So
There is some good therapy to have from a good batch of loud music, I guess.
yeah, I mean we have like metal yoga for quite a while now. If you, I mean, there's not a lot out there, but it's like, yeah, uh, which is yeah, yoga with like a lot of like metal and the instructor, she actually renamed a lot of the poses. So and then like kinda I won't say the names because then we're gonna have to mark the episode as explicit, like. But he's like the FU pose, so it's like, and then like stick your middle finger up, and like something. So it's kind of like they give them a twist, but yeah. So, but yeah,
The mind boggles. But I
yeah,
always feel better after going to a gig, so yeah, why not?
yeah. So anyway, let's go in the episode, and as always, there's no a lot of agenda here, but we kind of thinking of kind of obviously again talk about uh, our LGBTQ siblings and people that would like to be siblings, but the church's traditional stance keeps them away. But we're gonna be leaning more into transgenderism because we spoke about gay and lesbian like last year. So and we kind of looking at a song as well, like by. So it's not a reaction video basically, but it's kind of we think like to use the lyrics to dip in and out
Some of the lyrics.
by. Yeah, some of the lyrics about from cattle decapitation, the forced gender reassignment, which if you see like the first half of the song is very good. He has some really valid points, like talk about fear and this kind of thing. But then like the second half, it goes like hardcore gore, B, like low budget horror. Slasher horror, like torture porn or something. By the way, torture porn, for those who don't know, it's nothing to do with actual porn. It's actually films like Hostel, if you ever watch it. Like, it's basically horror films with a lot of torture. That's what's called torture porn. So it's not a snuff film. So for the unconverted. So
Where do we
want
start?
I mean, for that, I went there to watch a video on YouTube from Forrest Valkai, which the guy he's an evolutionary biologist, so he does a lot of YouTube videos and uh, around like evolution and but obviously like you need to understand like the guy is also an atheist, so a lot of times like I'm not saying this to say he's not right, but like kinda he after a certain point his interpretations, his explanations go like towards like a different you know.
He's
But
got an underlying agenda.
no, he doesn't promote atheism, but kind of like his lack of faith obviously informs his interpretations. But to a certain degree, biology is only records what is there.
Yeah.
So they don't create anything new or interpretate things. Kind of to the largest extent, they're like, this is there. Let's see how it's been made, basically. Uh, and and then also biology has a lot of different branches on its own, so it's not like one thing. Like, so there are like an awful lot of different biologies.
And it's only science, and science is learning as it goes along, because that's what science
No, I'm
is.
saying like even like Forrest, the guy, he's an evolutionary biologist, but then there are an awful lot of other different biologists, like
Sure.
different types.
Yeah.
They exploring different types of life, basically. But so I will leave a link for the video because like I rewatched it a couple of days ago and still it's very like, and he tries to make it like for like layman friendly, but still like quite confusing. And so basically in the video he goes through uh, how as a biologist how they basically is focused primarily on transgenderism, not the whole the video, but he makes a point for that because it biologically can be like with gay lesbians. There's nothing genetically that makes them gay or lesbian. They're like
So
because
almost
it's
by
sexuality.
definition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sexuality and sexual attraction. So it's kind of like it's it's in their head, not in a derogatory way. It's like literally
Yeah.
in your head because it's the way you sexually attracted and your sexuality isn't, it's not on your genes. Where transgenderism is actually in the chromosome and the genes. Like there's a lot of like chromosome and gene genetics and DNA. So, but and so I'll try to explain it somehow. So, first of all, like and what he was saying about sexuality and gender, he was going even on gender, but I'll keep it on sexuality. How so, and that's also like research within psychology and psychotherapy is like that sexuality is a spectrum.
Mm.
So basically, you say like no one's 100% gay or 100% straight or like so everyone moving in the spectrum. No, not no one. Like not everyone is 100% gay or
I was
100%
going to say
straight.
that's
So
going to upset some rednecks
yeah, so
somewhere.
some people might be 80% straight and 20% gay, but because the spectrum sexuality is so complex and so so that's a big thing. That's kind of literally you cannot put it in categories. Literally, you take one person and like this is that person that this is this person's sexuality and sexual orientation and he made an interesting definition, which I don't know if it was his or is something more scientifically. Said like gender. You're saying is how someone's sexuality and sex is being expressed within a social context.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, I found like an interesting term, but
Yeah, I'd associate that more with sexuality
yeah, yeah,
than gender, which
yeah.
to me is, I mean, yeah, it's not something I've looked into, but the sort of the issue, I guess, with sort of the situation that leads to people wanting to change gender, feeling they're in the wrong body, and that sort of thing, is a sort of complex, and again spectrum, but complex sort of physical and mental situation where, as you say, sexuality, I think, is more of it's a way you think. Trying desperately not to say it's in your head, because that makes that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to trivialize it, and I'm certainly not
I think it's in your head, like
insulting
a
any.
more tongue in cheek, but like
Yeah,
it's your head, like it's
it's
basically in your brain. So
not setting out to insult anyone
yeah,
of any persuasion, creed, color, gender, or anything else, or lack of gender, or yeah. Um, the language isn't designed for this, is it?
yeah,
It's yeah. It's. I mean, there are, from the experience of the people I've met, many reasons why people are homosexual. For instance, some of it they've always, some people I know they've always known that they were attracted to the same gender. Some people, it's come about through circumstances, they've been hurt or abused. Some people, you look around, I think it's almost a social decision. Um,
but
and
that
then
is
you
the
get
point that
into
like even
confusion over, or complications like bisexuality, people who are, sort of ungendered mentally, and all
because
this. Yeah,
when it comes like to response to trauma, it's kind of I have this theory as well, but it's like it's only a theory, right? Like we cannot really. I don't think we can really prove it because, or maybe research hasn't have
yeah,
any data yet. But even that's but like even in this case, it's not something you pray away, for instance, or like so you still take it as it is because it might not be trauma response
sure, yeah, no,
because
absolutely,
it
and it,
could because some a person can go through a trauma that make them afraid the opposite gender, but they may always be sexually attracted to the same gender anyway. So it's kind of that's why I said
yeah,
it's also
and it
how
could,
complex and
and it could easily be just, that trauma has overcome what was deep seated but suppressed by social conditioning. So
yeah, because then we have the social conditioning as well, isn't it?
yeah,
Especially and then especially if you say like especially if you grow up in I mean I could say like fundamentalistic Christian environment, but to be honest,
eh,
I remember what you were saying another time is that during the 70s you didn't have to be a Christian to be a bigot, but I think we're going back to this now. Like,
I don't think it ever
you
went
see,
away.
yeah,
It never
I mean,
went away.
I mean, you see people like around, like they don't profess any faith, and like they,
Yeah.
yeah, they kind of
Well, to
transphobic and homophobic, like just fine, like,
but to take it on, a slightly different track. 40 years ago, we were as teenagers, which gives you an idea of my age. We were getting very upset about racism in society, and the National Front were marching in London, and musicians who should have known better were coming out with all sorts of hate speech and all this stuff, and we got very irate. And 40 years later, you'd like to think things have got better, but you've only got to scratch the surface, and there's still a lot of racism out there.
I
And
mean, I
I
don't,
think and it's the same with bias and bigotry against uh,
I mean, I don't think
homosexuality or
you I don't
gender
think I don't
issues
think
or
we'll ever
whatever.
be able to read the society from those things. But
People are scared of what's different, which leads to, and people, I don't know, they don't want to learn, or they have difficulty in learning. I mean, I've actually heard people, again, on the racism thing, I've challenged people I know who've come out with some sort of very general disparaging comment about another race, and say, well, what about this person? You know them. I thought they were your friends. Oh yeah, I like them. They're all right. It's just the others I don't like because I don't know them. And it's not racist. It's just other. And I think, a lot of the attitudes to sexuality issues.
I think
Fall
with
out
like
into it. I just don't understand it. Therefore,
a quick comment on racism only, like because we don't want to go off topic.
yeah. Sorry.
It's kind of also it's a strange matter because yes, like we need to do read racism, but at the same time, it's a like a the racism card has been thrown all the way. I mean, you see it like with I don't know if you uh, uh, saw it with the whole the Queen Cleopatra Netflix production, which
I've heard bits about it. I haven't
they
seen it.
casted a black actor to play Cleopatra, but
Yes.
Cleopatra was a Macedonian Greek, so she would be looking closer to me
Yeah.
without a beard
I was going to say, I wouldn't have-
than a black person. Because by also I'm a Macedonian Greek,
yeah.
so I'm coming from my hometown. Uh, my family comes from the Macedonian area of Greece. So Cleopatra has more chance to look like me, even with a beard, than than any other black women, and there's a massive outroar against it. Even Egyptians,
Yeah.
like, and what the studio did, blames people for racism.
Yeah.
And it's kind of so that's what I'm saying. Like you know, it's
Well, yeah.
always
I
the
mean,
other end that we can't go like you know because of racism we cannot stop the criticism, valid criticism. Nothing to do with race. Like you know, if uh, you know that's wrong is wrong.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's historical inaccuracy. But
Yeah,
I mean, it's like all the portrayals of Jesus as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan, isn't it?
but
I mean,
two wrongs don't make someone else.
oh no,
You,
I'm
so,
not justifying.
someone because that was wrong doesn't mean it justify your wrong.
In that
Or
case,
like
we'll
James,
cast a Black Cleopatra. Yeah.
it was John Wayne who was playing. What he was playing? He was playing Jenkins Khan, I think. It was like anyway, back to our trans siblings. So to go on, I was saying with her like with the whole thing with chromosomes. It was really fascinating because basically biologically there is no there's no all humans regardless of like gender we're exactly the same internally, so it's only how those chromosomes they express or release proteins makes the difference between people. So
Yeah.
basically you're saying this chromosome. I mean, I'll put the video. The description is very good video to watch. So it releases a certain protein, which makes another chromosome releasing a protein, while blocks another chromosome from releasing a protein. That makes you develop testicles. And then, if the opposite happens, you develop ovaries, and all the female reproduction
Yeah.
things. But sometimes when it happens, so that set protein cannot it doesn't so that chromosome doesn't produce a certain protein, so confuse the other chromosomes, which basically your brain literally it's a male brain within a female body, and your
Okay.
body acts as a male. So you might be right, like have like ovaries and everything, but not don't having periods. You'd be completely infertile because basically you're meant to have testicles
Yeah.
and a wheelie, a penis, basically. Not to, put it scientifically. uh, and it was really, yeah, it was really fascinating, and it kind of, and for me, it was like, okay, so like, and it was also the thing, going back to what biology actually does, it's kind of so. It's how God made it.
Well, if it was easy, you wouldn't have needed God to create it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, half the problem is it's a fairly new branch of science, relatively speaking. I mean,
Hmm.
how the interaction of genes and chromosomes and hormones and chemicals and proteins and all that sort of stuff. Mind-boggling, actually. You know,
But also, it's kind of the thing. What I want to point out with the whole, you see it a lot of like from primarily from conservative Christian. They go like, okay, there are only two genders, like because God created male and female, it says in Genesis. But then for me, because if you go for like biblical literacy, what you doing with Paul saying there's no male or female anymore? Because if you go on biblical, basically what I'm doing here, I'm trolling, but it's kind of if we take the Bible like literally, then it's okay. It says male and female God created them, but also Paul says like within Christ there's no male or female. So what are we all not binary?
I think that's a
No,
stretch. I mean,
no. I mean, but it's kind of like if you take in
yeah,
approach, you have to take it to the whole book,
yeah,
not only
yeah.
where it suits your agenda.
Well, but this is the whole critique of the people who sort of treat homosexuality as an abomination because of what it says in Exodus, and I forget the chapter and verse, about basically setting down a whole list of do's and don'ts for right behaviour, which says a man shouldn't lie with a man. And everyone jumps on that and says, "Oh, well, homosexuality, it's wrong and it's against God's law." But these people, while they're saying it, are wearing garments of mixed materials, and the women
Eat
aren't wearing
pork,
headscarf, and they're
and eat
eating pork,
pork, and eat
and eating
shell,
shellfish on the wrong
seashell.
day, and the hundreds of other
They
rules
go
that
to
are
the
set
high
out
street
in Exodus.
on Saturday, and they do their
Yeah,
shopping.
so I think if you're going to argue from a biblical perspective, you've got to look at the context, and you've also got to be consistent. As you say,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you've got to take the whole of Scripture.
You have
Um,
if you're going for such a strict approach, then you have to apply that strict approach to everything,
yeah,
which is then it messes you up basically because like
well, it does
you,
because
as
there's
you,
all
you have
sorts
to
of
take everything on its own merit, and it's just what a lot of weird interpretations and theologies come. We take a verse from here, and another verse from another book written 1,000 years later, to another book that was written 4,000 years before that. That's kind of, and then here where we have a new branch of theology. Like, how you came with all those things? Like,
and, and at the end of the day, how do you square your "God hates fags" poster with "Love your neighbour as yourself"? You know, I mean, all through Old and New Testament, basically the message is love people.
not love people, but love your enemies.
Well, love your enemies. Love everybody. I mean,
No, I
you
said
are allowed to love
if
your
you
friends as well, but
if you think no, but they say if you think like homosexual as your enemy, then God, like
yeah,
Jesus, tells you have to love them.
and it's certainly not loving to have posters damning them to hell, is it? I mean,
But also
or
with
or,
the
or to
whole,
try and apply electric shocks to cure them, for that matter.
yeah, yeah. I mean, also with that, this kind of with what I was saying before is what you do with intersex people,
Mm.
which for those who don't know what intersex is, basically, how do you used to call it hermaphrodite?
Hermaphrodite, yes.
Hermaphrodite. Yeah, I mean,
Hermaph-
you need to sort out
hermaphroditic.
your pronunciation of Greek words, basically. Like,
Yeah.
it's very confusing for me.
Not being Greek, you know. I'll translate for the Anglophiles
Yeah.
or
So
Anglophones. Sorry.
Yeah, so basically, there are people that are born with both both
Yeah.
penis, testicles, not both, like penis, testicle, ovaries, vagina, everything, and this kind of the social constructs that you have to decide, or the parents have to decide, like how that. I mean, why you have to decide first of all, if you're born this way, and you're perfectly healthy. So there's no like health, like body, like there's no health implication for an intersex person. The only health implication is like in their mental health, because they kind of forced to choose, or like, okay, if they grow up and decide a certain way, then that's fine. Like, but why they need to be, they have to choose.
Yeah.
And there's like something like a lot of intersex people saying, like, the fact that I have to choose, like, why I needed to choose, like.
But then that's it's all complicated, and it's the parents actually who make the first choice.
Yeah, I
So,
don't think.
so
I
you've
don't,
got
yeah.
previous generation bias. You've got, I mean, parents have all sorts of funny ideas about their
But
children.
also, I wouldn't go like just parents, like the whole community, the whole
Yeah.
societies, because like the parents, they don't exist in isolation.
No, but I mean, society does follow broadly the you're either male or female model. And I think, you were saying earlier about, the argument, the Bible says God created men and women. I mean, statistically, that's correct. The majority are either men or women. I mean,
Yeah,
so I think
male or female. Let's put it this way.
or male and female. So yeah, but the small print where it says other combinations are possible seems to have got lost in the bottom.
Yeah,
It's the creation story. If it's talking about mammals, there's all sorts of mammals. There's also marsupials, which aren't mammals and aren't really anything other than marsupials. Doesn't
but
mention
also,
them at all. Where
and
did
also
they come from?
within primates, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
which is it's us as well. So we're primates,
yeah.
like chimpanzees and gorillas. So like sexuality is like, yes, and I was also watching, like, there's like a certain things, like I was like I don't remember, it was like a bug or something, or a lizard that has like 8 genders.
8.
Yeah, or like they have that thing that some like butterflies and other types of things, they kind of, from one side they're male, from the other side are female. Or if it's like I think it was lizards again, because lizards are the weird, like they do all that weird stuff.
Yeah.
And so if it's like a population that's only, there's no female in present, some of them they will gender swap
Yes. Yeah.
so they can reproduce.
Or seahorses,
Yes,
which,
yes, seahorse.
which can be male, and then decide to be female and carry or sort of have young and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, so I was listening about the other another lizard again, which is like, if he laid the eggs under the shade, there will be, all the eggs will be female. If he
Right.
lays them on the sun, they will be male. But if it gets too hot, it will be angry females. which they call them. That's like how biologists call them, hot females. I'm not. That's like that's the name that they gave
Yeah.
them, like hot females. Like it's so creative. Like, zero creativity at all. But it was funny because they're becoming female, but they're becoming like too very aggressive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, fine. I mean, going back to seahorses, my son, when he was younger, thought that actually seahorses were mythical creatures, and was very shocked to find out they actually exist.
You don't see
whatever.
them often, like yeah.
Well, no, I mean, whatever he'd been taught about seahorses, he was convinced they're a mythical creature, and they then did a school trip to an aquarium and showed him seahorses, and he came back lost for words. You know, they exist. Yeah, where's the Minotaur? You know, so, it's totally
Yeah,
irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. But yeah, I mean, nature's weird. It's got weird everything you can imagine, doesn't it?
mm,
Well, I guess people, it turns out, who knew, much the same. You get a little bit of everything.
yeah. But it's also I've seen. I was watching some documentaries, and they're saying like in a lot of traditions, uh, transgender people would be considered as like I mean in the Native Americans they used to call them they still call like a double spirited
Okay.
in a positive way, so that's
Yeah.
like that they will consider like extra spiritual and extra enlightened people because they kind of you have both, so both like in a way I think it was like both genders live in you, so it's kind of you kind of a special being,
Hmm.
uh, which yeah was quite interesting, and yeah.
So, yeah, how much of our attitude to these things is societal and historical and
Hmm.
so, I mean, bigotry or bias or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and where the underlying sort of causes for that are. I mean, I guess somewhere or other, someone was trying to control someone else when they came up with some of this stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
I think that the
and,
way
and yeah,
one theory I have is because a certain worldview becomes such a big part of your identity that any alternative view, it's a direct you perceive it as a direct attack to your identity, and
yeah,
I
no, I think
see
that's
that like
fair.
especially within fundamentalism
Yeah,
because that becomes of people's identities, like they like changing their theology means like abandoning God for them. Like God doesn't exist because like it's in such a level. So you challenge the theology, and they take it that you're challenging like God's existence.
mm.
Uh,
Yeah, that's well. I mean, that begs the question: how theologically sound is the attitude in the first place? But yeah, I mean, certainly people do get threatened by um, alternative arguments, new things. A lot of it, I mean, is a measure of their, insecurity in their own beliefs, or maybe lack of understanding in their own beliefs.
mm,
Um, I mean, you've got to wonder why people get so het up about some of these issues, not just this one, in
yeah.
churches or other walks of life. Actually, if it doesn't affect them personally, why are
Mm,
they that bothered? It's almost like, so why are atheists so concerned about people teaching Christianity, or other religions? If you don't believe it, it doesn't affect you. What's the problem? Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's like
it's
we're
part of
talking
a
about people that like those atheists are exactly the same person as the fundamentalist Christians, isn't it?
yeah.
So they could be easily be
It's
you know
nothing to do with what they believe. It's
yeah.
the dislike of anyone who might possibly have a reason to believe something else.
Hmm. And I
Um,
mean, especially from the atheist community, I mean, that's say like it's if there is a such a thing as the atheist community, but it's kind of I see it like quite a shift the last few years that they're moving from like that new atheist, angry atheist, like uh, what was the guy? Uh,
Dawkins?
Yeah, like Dawkins with like the
Yeah.
new angry
Always
atheist.
Dawkins. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always Dawkins. Like when we talk about angry atheists, like Dawkins is like,
It's got to be Dawkins. It's
but
like
it's
in
kind of
Sunday
yeah.
school, the answer's always Jesus. You know, you talk about atheists, the answer's always Dawkins.
Talk about the angry atheists, like yeah. It's like, so there's a move from that. So the kind of it's a lot more like they moving a lot like towards more like appreciation of like people's faith and religiosity and the way they want to express it and. Uh,
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
On talking about fundamentalists, like a side note, but it was also very funny. I was watching a video the other day about I was this couple. They did a press coverage of the Satan Con.
Okay.
So it's apparently the Satanic Temple in the U.S. They do a conference.
Right. Of course.
I mean,
they do.
they had a lot of like those things, like really, like they would like tearing Bibles and like, but
Ooh.
yeah, the main structure was quite scientifically orientated, so it was like a lot of like philosophy. But anyway, the whole thing. So at some point, like obviously a lot of like local Christian groups, they were like demonstrating them, and a fight started at some point.
Okay.
And who do you think were the two parties of the fight?
Go on.
So the one was the local Catholic church, and the other one was Washboro Baptist Church. So like you can't make those things up. Like it's like they literally start all
Yeah.
like they will start pushing each other. So there was quite. It's like. But yeah.
I'd have thought. I mean, fundamentalists, particularly fundamentalist Christians, you'd think they'd be happy to have people in the world who thought something different, just so they could feel smug about it, knowing that they're all going to burn in hell. You know.
Yeah.
It's either that or someone for them to talk to because they're following actually what the Bible says about taking the.
But also it's very interesting because, like, talking about like the Satanic Temple and most like modern Satanism, which is so they don't believe in an actual Satan. They don't worship. They don't devil worshippers. They don't even believe the devil exists. I'm talking about the Satanic Temple now, specifically. It's
So
more
just like dressing up, or
yeah. I mean, a lot of like dressing up, and also it's kind of like I think it's a reaction to Christian fundamentalism, basically. So it's kind of
it's guaranteed to poke buttons, isn't it?
yeah, and it's also this like Satan as a liberator, which is quite sad to be honest. Like it's sad because Christians we managed to make Satan the hero, basically. It's like it's sad. Like it's sad for the Christians.
Yeah.
Like because those people could could still be not atheist because most of them are kind of atheist. If Christians were acting properly, they could make those people okay. We like atheists that we kind of follow Jesus' teaching because I mean with a lot of them, if you sit down and talk about Jesus, the very few of them they will like take the Mickey, like and it's very interesting because there's not like a strict rule that you cannot be a believer. So they kind of they invite like they're open to people of every faith to be part of the Satanic Temple. But my point, the point I started to make basically was you have a lot of like trans people and gay and lesbians and in their search for community spirituality they ended up in places like the Satanic Temple, which I'm not saying they're losing their show, like I'm not saying that. I don't believe that, like just to make this clear, like but it's kind of we kind of pushing people away that they're yearning for spirituality, they're yearning for something greater and bigger than them. And it's kind of like, from one side we say that like, oh, Jesus is the answer. From the other side, like, you uh, big gods, you burn in hell. It's like how the cognitive dissonance is like
Yeah,
beyond
and I've,
belief. Like,
I've certainly I've never understood why a lot of churches, and I use the term understanding that it's got connotations of what I'm saying, but from those churches' perspectives, they will encourage some sinners, which is the emotive word, into the church because they want to save them from their sin, whilst other sinners, in their eyes, they deem unworthy of the church,
I think
which is not what Jesus said.
I mean, uh, as you're saying this, if you think about it, it's kind of those sinners, because deep down they cannot change. Sexual attraction cannot change. Sexuality doesn't
Yeah,
change. Gender doesn't change. Uh,
I mean there are
I
some
mean,
people for whom it's a life choice, but
physically you can change gender, but like
yeah,
internally, you were
you
born
are
this way. Like,
you are who
you
you
know,
are.
if you're a trans man, you're born a man,
Yeah,
but due to some uh, chromosomes acting a different way that they should be acting, you're born with a female genitalia. Like, but you're never. I mean, and I know trans people personally that, especially once. I mean, she hasn't transitioned, so I'll still refer as she, because she never done a transition to become a he. But she was telling us like, since I was a little baby, since she remembered herself, she was like, they would dress her up with like dresses and girly stuff. Like, and said, why are they dressing me like this? Like, why they dress me like a girl? I'm a boy. Why they dress me like a girl? Like,
but I know
and
you get, well. I mean that leads to the whole sort of, you get tomboys who are, as they're called, who they're girls who like
yeah,
dressing
but
in a
that's
more
that's
masculine
different,
way,
isn't it?
but it's got nothing to do with the femininity or the
Yeah,
sexuality.
yeah.
It's just
Yeah, it's
it's
very
the
interesting talking
idea that
about
the other gender has more fun somehow. I don't
that.
know.
Is talking about femininity. It's kind of remind me. You know, the part of our brain that makes us male, that makes us masculine, is a certain part of our brain that is bigger.
Okay,
So that makes you more masculine, basically, more
right.
masculine. Like where in women that part of the brain is not so big as in men. And so in gay men, that part of the brain is even bigger.
Okay.
Because but it's very funny because like the whole thing was like for years like gay men, they're not men, they're like
Yeah.
they too effeminate. It's like it actually biologically they're like more they have more masculinity than straight men.
Okay. Yeah. Well, as I say, I
it
think
was it
there's
was
been a lot of assumptions over the years, isn't there? I mean, but
well
you've
yeah,
only got to look at the people that you meet who are gay. Some gay men have sort of feminine affectations, and others are very masculine. You know, I
but
don't.
then
It's not as simple as all that.
yeah,
You
we go
can't.
back to the complexity of like
Yeah, you
of
can't.
sexuality and sex, isn't it?
Yeah,
How complex it is, because I mean you can be like a straight. I mean I have a friend that is a cis straight male, and he has like that. I mean, again, we shouldn't call it this way because they're like what we be perceived as like being a little bit feminine,
yeah.
which is, as I said, like for lack of a better term, like he's what he is basically. Like how his voice sounds, it doesn't matter. But socially, he'll be considered like his voice a bit like in the way he speaks, like a bit
Mm.
effeminate. But he may have like a little bit lower levels of testosterone, so his voice is a bit softer,
Yeah.
or he has like a a, a smaller uh, di- uh, di- diaphragm.
Diaphragm.
Diaphragm. Yeah. Again,
Epiglottis.
going like how to pronounce Greek words in English. This is the case because that's why men we have like lower voice because
Deeper voices. Yeah.
like this our diaphragm is bigger. So like a male with a smaller diaphragm, his voice will be softer because like it is. And the pipeline that comes up is
And,
makes it.
that's probably just physics, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like physics. You can't do anything about it. That's nothing
Yeah.
to do with your sexuality. It's like, uh, yeah,
It's a mixed up, muddled up, messed up world, except for Lola. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't, I think it's like I don't know. In a way, it's a mess, but like in some ways, like a, a beautiful mess, kind of.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I think what occurs to me is the stuff we've been talking about, and notwithstanding the struggling to find inoffensive ways of putting it, but you could apply it to a lot of different aspects of people and life other than sexuality. Some people are more skilled at some things than other things. Some people are creative. Some people aren't creative. Some people are
Mhm.
practical. Some people aren't practical. All of life is spectrum. It's
But it's also funny because, like we say, a lot of things like adult for boys, adult for girls, but that's a construct, and it's
yeah,
funny because like they take to traditional values, and it's kind of you realize that actually like colors for instance, like what's a boy color, what's a girl's color, they've been developed during the 1930s.
but they've changed.
So for like 50,000 years, we were fine wearing whatever. Like suddenly, the last
Ah,
100 years, like some marketer decided like pink belongs to girls. So like suddenly now, like men cannot wear pink. I mean,
yeah.
it,
So traditionally, I think it was possibly in Victorian times,
boys will dress in pink.
boys were dressed in pink for
But
like
if you say
christening
like
robes.
royals, you can see
Yeah,
that when royals get like christened the royal family, when they christen the kids, the princes were wearing pink.
yeah,
So
and it
in the
flipped sometime.
in the upper class, it's actually still like this.
Yeah,
Boys are still like wearing pink when they were like. So I
because they're
guess
still using the traditional christening robes, probably.
yeah, yeah. For boys were pink.
Yeah, and the girls were all blue, and yeah, yeah. I mean, it's fashion, isn't it? Then,
Yeah,
um,
that's how the world and the values changes, isn't it? Like, sometimes I'm catching myself. Like I'm 42 now. It's kind of I'm catching myself like think like how reflect how the world is changing. It's like something like I get like bit defensive and then I remind myself, okay, like you know, you just see this change because and you don't know how to adapt in this change like that. So
yeah,
I remember like having this conversation with my dad, and he was my dad is kind of typical. He will, I mean, you have to trust on him in every conversation. You find to say things either be homophobic, racist, uh, conspiracy theory or like misogynistic. So it's always like you know where it's gonna go. Like it's like that awkward angle at the parties. That's my dad, uh, and he was like, like men knitting. Wow, I was like, what? And I said like, what's the problem with men knitting? I was like, well, that's a woman's job. Like, okay, like, what do you mean it's a woman's job? It's like they knitting a pair of socks or like a jumpers. Like what that has to do with their
yeah.
masculinity? It's like it's like the demolition man. I woke up with cryo with a net with a crazy ends to knit. If you-
Well, and and what happens if you haven't got a woman around to knit your
yeah,
socks? You know, you have to knit your own.
you go adopt one from the local closer village. It's like
Or
no, I
maybe you
mean
get
that's like you do it because of like out of like the need.
the need, yeah.
Uh, yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
it's that sort of 50s idea of woman's place is doing domestic stuff, and
I thought it's something else. I was talking with a kid, a literary kid. When we had this conversation, he was about like 16 or something, like a couple of years ago. And she was telling me like a lot of like boys, like straight boys in her school, like they polishing their nails. It's like, and I
yeah.
said, and I said, like, are they gay? No, no, they're like straight as a pencil. Like,
Yeah. Well, it's a goth
okay.
thing, isn't it?
No, I mean like, no, I mean they're not even gods, like normal,
Yeah,
like non-alternative.
non-alternative. Yes.
Yeah, because if you see a goth, yeah, you expect him to see it. Like you don't notice him to a goth. It's like it's part of the gear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's like
And well, yeah. I mean, you look at the amount of effectively men's beauty products in the shops.
yeah,
You know, there's as much sort of self-pampering goes on with some men. Other
we
men
had
would think that's not a masculine thing. I
we
don't
had
know.
one thing to feel great about, and they ruin it for us. Like one thing that as a man I had to feel good. It was like I can just grab whatever is in front of me
Yeah.
and just walk out of the house. And now, no, that's have to.
No, I mean, I got to. As I say, I mean, yeah, I'm old and I carry old baggage with me. And I had to sort of walk through a local shopping centre and I had to do a double take because there was a guy there getting his eyebrows done.
Mm,
They have these things in the middle of shopping centres.
yeah,
And there's a whole row of seats and all the girls there and getting their eyebrows trimmed. And there's a guy in the middle of it. And I thought, well, yeah, but that's just a fashion thing, isn't it?
but you see the other
But
way.
it seemed
What?
weird, but it shouldn't.
I mean, let's say like you said, like it looks weird to me. It's like, but in the end of the day, what do you care?
I didn't bother me in the
No,
slightest.
no, no, no. I'm not saying like to you.
But
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like in general. Like, what do you care if like this guy like what? How this affects your life?
So
Like even like in things like sexuality and like someone transitioning, how that affects your life?
do you know,
Like,
I may have told you this story before, but I mean, when I was at school in the sixth form, one of my friends came out as gay, and this was the late '70s. He got a lot of stick from certain people, and there was one guy in particular who was always on with the homophobic comments, and every time this guy walked in to the sixth form, it was oh, way up is so and so, backs against the wall, and I mean, it was just irritating. And on one occasion, the gay guy finally lost it with this guy, and he said, "You're all right, Ian. I don't fancy you." And this guy's response was, "Why? What's wrong with me?" And then he realised what he'd said.
you dug your own grave. Is it?
And you think, yeah, methinks he protests too much.
But it's actually it's very interesting that there is research around it that men that they tend to be very homophobic, they're actually very likely to be gay themselves.
Yeah,
And that was research, and the research actually was they put men that they self-confess homophobes and men that they weren't, like they were saying like I'm affirming, and they put them towards gay porn. And literally all the guys, that was like all of them, that they were like self-confessing homophobes. They got aroused.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Next time I see someone being homophobic, I probably won't suggest that to them. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone at home. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's that. There's clearly a threat there to make it worth your bother to make a noise, isn't there? I mean,
But why is a
there's that-
threat? Why you should be threatened with someone
Oh,
else's sexuality, isn't it? I mean,
but
we have
it's
even in terms
ego,
of
I
like
don't know.
sexual harassment. I'm not saying like there's no. Of course, there's sexual harassment within the LGBTQ community
Yeah,
because like the people, they're not immune to that. But you have the vast majority of harassments between male and female, like
yeah,
straight males harassing straight, like harassing females.
yeah.
So basically, you're more in danger, more in risk as a female being harassed by a male than being a male being harassed by a gay male. I'm not saying this won't happen. Of course, it will happen because there are some.
Because everything happens.
Yeah, everything happens everywhere. But in terms of statistics,
Yeah,
the statistics are to their benefit, to the gay men's benefit. Like
well,
there's a lot less likely to be harassed by a gay man, but than a straight male harassing a female.
white male bias, isn't it?
Mm, yeah. Okay. I mean, I think with this thought, we can wrap this thing up because we just gone over an hour. So I mean, we can talk for hours for those things, but it's kind of
We end up
That's-
saying the same thing again and again in different ways.
yeah. So like it's kind of like keep it.
Anyone still listening? Yeah.
Everyone's still listening. Let's start an argument in the comments because like Christians tend to be really like hot when it comes to
Oh,
to
Are
what
we
you're doing with the bits and bobs.
Oh well, yeah. There's a whole. I think it comes down to being people. I mean, yeah, people are flawed. I've never quite understood why churches get so hung up over homosexuality, and then will quite happily accept people who are living together outside marriage. So, you know,
Which you should accept everyone.
well, you accept everyone, but if you're going to get uptight about one lifestyle, you've got to be consistent. If you're going by the book, go by the book. However you
Yeah.
interpret the book, and whether we agree with that interpretation or not, be consistent, guys. But I don't know.
It's things that kind of makes us feel good with ourselves, isn't it? Like it's like the thing when someone might try to justify they're not that bad. So like I'm not like Hitler, like it doesn't.
Oh well,
yeah,
that's all right then. Yeah.
yeah, because you haven't killed millions, it doesn't mean you're a
Yeah.
good person. Like so, I think it's always like a thing like to have something worse than us to like say at least I'm not like them. So at least I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I think
But as you say, it's a human thing. I mean, because I mean, I had this conversation in a group, and said, people if like the problem is organized religion. Like the problem is not organized religion; just facilitate. It like makes it easy for.
it's tribalism.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's like organized religion. Religion just makes it easy for perverts, for instance, to roam around. But the problem is, you can see it, you know, with with what was happening with Andrew Tate, for instance, like, or Jordan Peterson, for instance. I mean, Jordan Peterson hasn't got any scandals around him, but the way that a lot of people like see him, they perceive him as a god. Try to make any criticism about what Jordan Peterson says, and they're gonna jump on you. It's actually the same thing. So you
But
may
but that,
not.
but that's the same in any walk of life, isn't it? I mean,
Hmm,
there are people who get very upset if you talk disparagingly about Beyonce, or it's pop
yeah,
stars or movie stars or politicians. Man,
yeah.
politics.
I mean, like
Take a
Andrew Tate
politics.
and Jordan Peterson was only an example. Like,
Yeah,
it,
but
but I brought them because they're not religious leaders.
so I think, but bring it back to something biblical. I think it's fair to say that God loves everybody. Jesus invited everybody to come and explore, come and meet with him,
Yeah,
um, and
I think that
and
the
and
problem here.
encourages us or tells us to love each other as we love ourselves. So
It's I think well, but I think it comes to this is saying like God loves everyone. Sometimes it can be taken as a I don't know. I think, but I believe like people don't care if God loves them or not.
and
Pe-
I am
people
certainly,
people people care if we love them.
yeah, but that's the instruction to Christians is to love others as you love yourself.
And Jesus said
And
like you will know people will know you're my disciples from
also,
the love
yeah, and
from your love, isn't it?
at the end of the day, the Bible also tells us that the only judgment is God's. We are not to judge people. We can't possibly know the rights and wrongs of any of this. That's down to God.
Mm.
We might have a view on it, but there's no guarantee that that's right.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like this like the I don't know if it's an actual sign of someone like made it a meme. It's like just love everyone and I'll sort them out later.
yeah, that's the conclusion I came to many years ago. I can't choose who God wants in heaven, so I'll just invite them all in, and if they want to come, then that's fine. And if I've invited too many, God can tell me afterwards. But I'd hate to be in front of God saying, oh, I didn't think you meant them.
I mean, also I think Rita Rohr put it quite well. Oh no, there wasn't Rita Rohr. It was Desmond Tutu, the late now
Yeah,
Archbishop. Oh no, Bishop. It wasn't Archbishop. Bishop Desmond
Bishop. Yeah.
Tutu. He said, I mean, if I reach the gates of heaven and I find a homophobic God, I'll try my luck with the other guy.
I can imagine him saying that. Actually. Yeah. Yes.
Anyway,
Uh,
we need to wrap this thing. It's like a sermon, isn't it? Like and the preacher said the last thing for the 50th time.
yeah. Oh, and by the way,
And one last thing.
uh,
Okay, guys. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Obviously, as
so
we
do I,
always say,
because otherwise I'm
we
wasting my time here. Yeah.
we don't know everything. It's just like a few things, like to start a conversation or like put some thoughts. Uh,
Maybe
yeah,
a slightly alternative view from the preconceptions that people might have about.
but also it's kind of for me it's kind of making the point even to to and saying our siblings in the LGBTQ community. I'm not saying this lightly. I truly believe this. It's kind
Oh
of
yeah,
just
I
to
know.
make them see that kind of there is uh you know God doesn't hate you, and there are spaces that kind of they'll be happy to have you without wanting to change you. Basically,
Mm.
that
So
that's the
wouldn't
point.
it be nice if we could just say people in the community rather than specifying what community.
Yeah.
You know
But
what I mean?
yeah. Well, yeah, but the conversation today was
I know.
about a
I mean,
specific.
yeah, I know, but I know why. But and I know the barriers and the hurt actually
Yeah, yeah.
that a lot of gay people particularly feel through experiences of church and the rejection of people within church.
And we don't have to understand it, isn't it? That's my point a
Yeah,
lot of time. The point I make to myself, basically, like you don't have to understand it. It's it just be enough that that person is the way they are. It's kind of you know.
or talk to them and try and understand it.
No, I
You
mean
know,
that's fair. It's
I'm
it's okay. It's okay. Don't have to necessarily
yeah,
understand it, even if you never understand it. It's like that has nothing to do. That's a different path. Like
yeah, no, but what what I'm saying, I guess, you know, as I say, I'm old and brought up in a different generation where these things weren't even talked about, and actually, in recent years, I've learnt a lot because I have met gay Christians and who have talked openly about their faith and how they interact and their experience of various churches and the hurt they've experienced and the love they've experienced, depending on where they've ended up, and how they reconcile their feelings, their sexuality with a world with churches that don't accept it. Part of life's rich tapestry, and having those conversations actually, for a start, made me think about the realities of it rather than something you could just sort of, oh yeah, black and white, that's the answer to that. It made me think it through for myself, and to judge those conversations in the context of scripture, which these people believe, and actually their openness and honesty about the conflicts in their life. And also, interestingly, their views on other aspects of the LGBTQ community and all of that. It's and just treating it like sort of another aspect of life, which is it's people. It's interesting to find out how people tick, and it doesn't matter whether you understand it or not in terms of I don't understand the attraction to people of the same sex, but that's because I'm not attracted to them. I can't possibly understand. Presumably they can't understand heterosexual attraction. It doesn't matter because they're people and they've got lives and they've got experiences, and actually it's interesting to talk to them.
As a friend of mine said once, can we just be people?
Yeah, that's sort of what I was saying. When we're talking about to our siblings in the LGBT, actually to our siblings in humanity, let's just be nice to people, nice to each other.
Well, I think it's worth making like a special note of that, because it's like the ones that got like they had a special amount of hurt.
Yeah.
So
and it's like
I think it's a
like the
we
Black
have
Lives
to make
Matter
a
thing.
like the Black Lives Matter. We have to make a special, like of course, like everyone's life matter, but like I'm not me as a white
no one
male.
was
I'm
ever
not the one.
questioning that.
I'm not the one that getting like shot in the head because I was just walking down the road. Like it was the black kids and the same way, like me as a straight male, I'm not the one that I have to justify my sexuality. It's the
or worry
gays and the lesbians and the transgender and the queer that they have they feel that someone asks them to justify their sexuality.
The thought that you might have to be on the defensive every time you walk into a social situation, I mean,
it's really exhausting. I believe it's something exhausting, isn't it?
Almost like being a Christian. Sorry, I know that which is belittling, but
anyway,
no,
we need to finish that.
I apologise. Obviously, it's a whole different scale of
Yeah.
words and
No,
whatever.
no,
But
no. We're gonna burn you.
yeah, okay, I'll burn. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Cool. Oh yeah, guys. Hope you
yeah.
had fun.
Comment below and tick like or angry faces or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Be passive aggressive. Like put angry faces. Like
Yeah,
and
and then
we
write a comment to justify it.
no passive aggressive and we won't care. Like put some comments to help the algorithm.
Yeah.
Write hateful comments because that will help the algorithm and will push our videos higher up. With this thought, bye.
Okay. Bye. God bless.